The xenobiology lab aboard the Covenant station hummed with its usual sterile efficiency when the breach alarm shattered the afternoon shift. Elsa's clawed hands froze over her data tablet as red emergency lights bathed the observation deck in crimson waves. Hostile bioform detected. Section 7 compromised, the station AI announced with mechanical calm. Benny looked up from the specimen containment unit he'd been calibrating, his brown eyes widening. The human pressed his palm against the transparent aluminum viewport, peering into the corridor beyond. Through the reinforced glass, Elsa watched his expression shift from curiosity to something she'd learned to recognize over their 3 months working together, that peculiar human quality her species called tactical improvisation, though her people had no equivalent instinct for it. "It's a Kresh hunter," Elsa said, her translator converting her clicks and whistles into standard. Her feathered crest flattened against her skull, a be an instinct her species had never evolved past. "We need to seal this section and wait for security." The creature in the corridor was massive, easily 3 meters of chitinous armor and razor mandibles. It had somehow escaped from the deep quarantine levels, 12 floors below. Kresh were rated Class 5 aggressive shoot on sight, no exceptions. The nearest security team was 8 minutes away. "It's cutting through the door," Benny observed, his voice carrying that unsettling human steadiness that emerged during crisis. The hunter's acid spray was already eating through the reinforced steel, bubbling and hissing as molecular bonds disintegrated. Elsa's mind raced through protocols. The lab contained no weapons. Covenant regulations strictly prohibited arms in research sections. The panic room would take 45 seconds to open, and they'd be exposed for 30 of those seconds while the authentication processed. The Kresh would tear through the melting door in less than 20. "I need your fuel catalyst cartridges," Benny said suddenly, already moving toward the equipment lockers. "What?" "Those are for the mass spectrometer, and your hydrogen peroxide sterilization solution. The 90% concentration." Elsa's translator struggled with the rapid-fire human speech. "Benny, we need to—" "12 seconds," he interrupted, his hands already pulling open storage compartments with the confidence of someone who'd memorized the entire lab layout. "Trust me." It went against every survival instinct Elsa possessed. Her species had survived extinction-level events through caution, through committee consensus, through careful risk assessment. But she'd watched humans long enough to know that when they spoke in that particular tone, with that particular focus, something extraordinary was about to happen. She retrieved the hydrogen peroxide from the chemical storage, her hands trembling. Benny had already grabbed a fuel cartridge, a length of flexible polymer tubing, and what appeared to be a laboratory igniter used for Bunsen burners. "Pressure valve from the nitrogen tank," he said, pointing. The Kresh broke through. Its screech pierced the lab as its mandibles clacked against the metal frame. 8 meters away. 7. Elsa threw him the valve. Benny's fingers moved with practiced precision, snapping components together. The fuel cartridge connected to the tubing. The hydrogen peroxide reservoir, a standard lab bottle attached to a makeshift mixing chamber he'd fashioned from a graduated cylinder. The pressure valve forced oxygen through the system, and the igniter mounted at the nozzle end. 6 meters. The Kresh's compound eyes fixed on them, multifaceted death, reflecting emergency lights. "It won't work," Elsa breathed. "The combustion temperature. Hydrogen peroxide decomposes exothermically over the platinum catalyst in the fuel cartridge," Benny said, his voice carrying the cadence of someone working through calculations even as his hands moved. "Oxygen and superheated steam. Mix with the aerosolized fuel, ignition temperature drops to 280 Celsius. Lab igniter hits 1,400. 5 meters. He squeezed the makeshift trigger, a simple pressure valve from the nitrogen system. The laboratory filled with a sound Elsa had never heard before, a roaring whoosh that seemed to vibrate through her hollow bones. A lance of orange flame erupted from Benny's improvised device, 5 meters long, bright enough to overwhelm the emergency lights. The Kresh shrieked, a sound like tearing metal. Its chitin crackled and blackened under temperatures that shouldn't have been possible from laboratory equipment. The creature thrashed backward, biological survival instincts overriding its predatory programming. Benny held his ground, adjusting the fuel mixture with minute turns of the valve, keeping the flame precisely between them and the monster. 30 seconds of sustained fire. The Kresh retreated into the corridor. its armor smoking. 45 seconds. Security teams arrived, plasma rifles already firing containment rounds. Benny released the pressure valve. The flame died. He set the device carefully on the lab bench, hands finally trembling with post-adrenaline reaction. What? Elsa managed, her translator crackling with the complexity of her shock. Was that? Flamethrower, Benny said, like it was the most obvious thing in the universe. Basic principle. Fuel, oxidizer, ignition source, pressure system. We've been building variations on the design for 3,000 years. The security chief, a hulking Crothian, examined the improvised weapon with something approaching reverence. Human, she rumbled. How long did this take you to construct? Benny checked his wrist display. 12 seconds, maybe 13. Elsa felt her crest rise slowly, the avian equivalent of stunned laughter. Her people had spent 10,000 years developing their civilization through careful, methodical progress. Humans had apparently spent theirs learning to weaponize everything they touched, including laboratory safety equipment. Improvise a weapon, they said during orientation. Benny said, a slight smile finally cracking his serious expression. I thought it was just protocol. It was, Elsa reflected, watching security teams contain the creche with proper military hardware. But only humans heard improvise a weapon, and instinctively knew that everything was a weapon, you just had to see it correctly. She made a mental note to update the Galactic Council's Human Integration Guidelines. Section 7, subsection on creative problem solving, seemed woefully inadequate. The lab would need recalibration. The mass spectrometer was missing parts, but they were alive. And somewhere in the human's mind, 12 seconds had been enough time to remember 3 millennia of fire, violence, and survival, and compress it into a weapon built from beakers and tubing. Elsa decided humans were either the most terrifying species in the galaxy or the most useful, possibly both.